Look at the front of your house. You probably see a door, a window, maybe a mailbox. But there is one tiny detail you barely notice. A number. 12, 13, 14. It looks so ordinary that you probably never ask why it is there. But imagine waking up tomorrow and every house number in your city has disappeared. Number 42. Number 17. Number 901. Suddenly, your home becomes strangely difficult to describe. You could say the street. You could describe the building. You could say, the house next to the bakery. But one simple number can tell a stranger exactly where to go. And the strange part is this. House numbers were not originally created just to help people find your home. They became a way of counting, controlling, organizing, and eventually identifying human lives through physical space. And once that happened, the way people thought about where they lived began to change. For most of human history, a house did not need to be 17. It could simply be the baker's house, or the house beside the church, or the red house, or perhaps it had a family name attached to it. In many older towns, people identified places through landmarks, occupations, buildings, neighborhoods, and local knowledge. You didn't necessarily need an exact numerical address. You needed to know the people. And that tells us something important. A home was originally understood less like a coordinate, and more like a place inside a community. Your house made sense because everyone around you knew where it was. Then cities started getting bigger. And suddenly, knowing everyone wasn't enough. Imagine a growing city with thousands of houses. A government wants to count the population. A soldier needs a place to stay. A tax collector needs to identify a property. Officials need to keep records. The problem is obvious. How do you systematically identify thousands of individual buildings? One answer was extremely simple. Put numbers on them. Researchers studying the history of house numbering describe it as much more than a postal convenience. Numbering was used for government purposes including military conscription, housing soldiers, population counting, and policing. And that changes the meaning of the number on your door. It isn't just saying, this is your house. It's also saying, this place can now be counted. This was a huge change in how authorities could understand a city. Before numbering, a city could feel like a complicated maze. After numbering, buildings could be turned into entries in a system. House 1, House 2, House 3, House 4. A physical neighborhood could become something much closer to a database. And that sounds boring. But this is where the story gets interesting. Because once humans discovered that you could organize a city using numbers, we started doing it everywhere. A building could have an address. A street could have a sequence. A property could appear in a record. A person could be connected to a place. The city itself became easier to measure. And once something becomes measurable, it becomes much easier to manage. This is one reason historians describe house numbering as part of the broader transformation of the modern city. But then something unexpected happened. The number escaped the government. Imagine you're trying to deliver a letter. You know the person's name. You know the street. But which house? If the buildings have numbers, the problem becomes much easier. The same thing happens with visitors, merchants, businesses, public services, maps, directories. As modern addressing systems developed, the number increasingly became a practical shortcut for locating a specific building. Numbering systems spread across European cities especially during the 18th century, although earlier numbering schemes existed in some places and their original purposes were sometimes unclear. So the number that began partly as an administrative tool gradually became something ordinary people depended on. And that is the first big transformation. The number changed your relationship with the city. You no longer had to know a place personally. You could know it abstractly. You didn't need to know the baker. You needed the address. And suddenly, a stranger could find your home. That sounds convenient, but it also created something new. Think about the difference between these two descriptions. This is the house where Sarah lives. 47 King Street. The first one is about a person. The second is about a location. That sounds like a tiny linguistic change. But it has enormous consequences. Once your home has a standardized address, it can exist in systems far beyond your neighborhood. A letter can reach it. A delivery can reach it. A municipal record can reference it. A map can display it. A business can register it. A government can organize information around it. Your home becomes part of a larger network. And that means something strange happens psychologically. We begin to think of where we live not only as a place, but as an identifier. Ask someone where they live today. They might give you a city, a street, a number. Sometimes the number itself becomes part of their identity. I live at number 10. I grew up at 221B. My grandparents lived at 14. The number can carry memories. And that's where the story turns personal. A house number is supposed to be objective, just a label. But humans are very bad at leaving labels emotionally empty. We give places meaning. A number can become associated with childhood, a marriage, a family, a first job, a difficult period, a place someone left behind. So the same number that was designed to make a building easier to identify can eventually become something much more emotional, a symbol of a life. Think about how often people remember their childhood home by its number, not because the number itself was beautiful, but because everything that happened inside that number mattered. The number becomes a container for memory, and there is an even stranger transformation. The address can become part of social identity. Certain streets become prestigious. Certain neighborhoods become desirable. Certain addresses become famous. A location can influence how other people perceive you. The number is no longer merely helping someone find your house. It is helping society decide where you belong. Before standardized addressing, getting to a place often depended heavily on local knowledge. Today we think differently. We assume almost any place can be identified. Give us an address. We'll enter it into a phone. A route appears. A line moves across a map. And suddenly the city feels searchable. That's a remarkable psychological shift. We have become used to the idea that every building should be locatable. But that expectation is actually historical. Even today, there are places where addressing systems remain incomplete or inconsistent, creating real problems for deliveries, government services, and emergency response. The importance of reliable addresses becomes especially obvious during disasters, when responders may need to locate homes quickly. So a house number isn't just about convenience. It is part of the infrastructure that makes a modern city legible. But remember how this story began. House numbers didn't simply help people. They also helped authorities see people. Once buildings could be numbered and systematically recorded, governments gained new ways to organize populations. Who lives here? How many people live there? Which properties exist? Where are they? Which houses belong to which administrative area? The number turns physical space into information, and information creates power. That doesn't make house numbers evil. It simply reveals what we usually miss. Something as innocent-looking as a number can change the relationship between ordinary people and the systems around them. Your home feels private, but your address makes it visible to a much larger world. Today you don't just receive mail at your address. You use it to order food, register a business, receive a package, call emergency services, fill out forms, buy something online, find a property, invite someone over. Even digital maps are built around the basic assumption that physical places can be represented as precise locations. The tiny number on your wall is part of a much bigger system. And here's the irony. The house number was created to make a building easier to identify, but eventually the building became easier to forget as a human place. We can reduce an entire home to 47, one number, one location, one data point, and yet behind that number might be a family that has lived there for generations. A child taking their first steps, someone returning home after 20 years, a birthday, an argument, a goodbye. The number doesn't tell you any of that. It only tells you where. So the next time you walk past a house number, don't think of it as decoration. Think about what it represents. At first, humans knew homes through people, landmarks, and memory. Then growing cities needed a way to count and organize physical space. Numbers helped turn buildings into identifiable units. Those units became easier to record, manage, map, and reach. And eventually, the number became part of how we think about identity itself. A house number looks like a tiny piece of metal, paint, or plastic, but it quietly transformed the modern city. It changed a house from "that place over there" into something the entire world can identify. And maybe that's the strangest thing about it. The number on your door does not tell anyone who you are. It simply tells them where you exist. And humans built an entire society around that distinction.